So we're here at the Sugar Shack at the Ashokan Center with Tim New, who is the sap man for how many years now?
I guess this would be my 41st year, believe it or not.
Wow, that's a lot of time. And so tell us a little bit about maple sugaring and what goes into it and what you hope the kids will learn from going through this process of seeing it done firsthand.
Okay, well, maple sugaring is a great way to illustrate a whole lot of principles that the kids learn about in school, and they get to see things firsthand here, like the water cycle, like tree identification. And so when they arrive here at the Sugar Shack, they start with a bit of a history lesson. They go through how the Native American people were tapping trees long before the Europeans ever came to this country. And they had rather primitive methods, but maple sugar was a very important part of their diet. Then the colonial people learned from the native people and had some better equipment and easier tapping techniques and easier boiling techniques. And it was a very important part of the economy in colonial America. Most of the sugar in those days was imported from the Caribbean, and there was a big move to become independent of Caribbean sugar, which relied on slave labor. And so there was a whole abolitionist movement even based on the maple sugaring industry. Thomas Jefferson heavily promoted maple sugaring. And they made more maple sugar back in those days than we even do now, because almost every farm did it. Maple is known as the first crop of the year, so when many farmers didn't have much else to do, they would be out in the woods tapping trees and making sugar. Back then, most of the sap was boiled all the way to sugar because it was so much easier to store than syrup. It didn't require a waterproof container. And that's what they used for all their cooking, their baking. A fair amount of it went into making rum back in those days. And it was gradually became a industry that was very popular throughout the whole Northeast. There's only about 13 states that produce maple sugar, and it's done only during a short time of the year from late winter to early spring. So right now, in early March, we're right in the middle of the season.
So what's happening to the trees that would make it the time to do it?
The trees are beginning to go into their budding cycle. And so they're dormant all winter. But when the days start to get above freezing, the trees start to basically come awake again. And they used the stored sugar that they produced last summer through photosynthesis. They store away that sugar. And this time of year, when the days are in the 40s and the nights are still below freezing, is when the sap starts to flow. And it's the perfect time to be able to harvest some of that sap.
So what are the things that the kids get to participate in when they come to the Ashokan Center?
Well, there's probably about 15 different classes they can choose from. This time of year, maple sugaring is one of the most popular because it's just such a unique event and involves a little hiking. The Sugar Shack was built out here about a half a mile from the main campus because this is where we have a perfect grove of maple trees. And we're fortunate that the trees grow on a hillside, so we use a tubing system to collect the sap, which saves lots of labor and not having to gather the sap from buckets. A lot of modern sugar shacks now use vacuum pumps to actually suck the sap from the trees, but we don't have any electricity out here at the Ashokan Sugar Shack, so we're fortunate to be able to use gravity to move the sap to the sugar shack. So you can see the big tanks up there behind me are where the sap gets stored, and each of those tanks holds 150 gallons. And that sounds like a lot of sap, but from each one of those tanks, if it was full, we'd only get about 3 gallons of syrup. 40 to 50 gallons of sap have to be boiled down to make just 1 gallon of maple syrup. It's very labor intensive, and a lot of the modern sugar shacks now have all kinds of fancy equipment to make the process more efficient. They have reverse osmosis machines which can remove up to 60% of the water before they even start to cook it. But here we do it the old-fashioned way. We have a wood-fired stove under our evaporator pans here, and we just got that going, so you can see it's just starting to steam a little bit. But this is a high-efficiency evaporator. It's designed with the bottoms are corrugated, so there's lots of surface area. So with this evaporator, I can boil off about 20 gallons of water an hour. But still, on a full day of boiling, I'll only be able to make maybe 2 or 3 gallons of syrup. And that depends also on the sugar content of the sap. The average sugar content is about 2%. We're a little low this year. We're about 1.8%, which translates to about 46 gallons to 1. So it's not been an ideal year. Very warm, so the sap has been continually flowing in the trees. And this tapping season has definitely gotten earlier. Since I started here back in the early 80s, we used to tap around President's Day weekend, around February 20th. And this year we tapped actually on February 2nd. And there were many local people that were tapped up in late January this year.
And has that been a trend, or is that just like depending on the actual year? I mean, each year they're saying it's getting warmer and warmer, so do you think that's the new trend?
It is. It is. I've talked to some of the local old-timers that said they never tapped trees until like the very end of February. So we're almost a full month earlier now. And the season used to go into early April, and now it's done by about the 3rd week of March. We're hoping that it will go at least another couple weeks. We have the Ashokan Center Maple Fest coming up. We'll be open to the public for visits that day. There'll be pancake breakfasts being served at the campus and hikes out here to the sugar shack, and we'll be doing the whole activity, tapping trees, making syrup, and one of our favorite activities is at the end of the class we make a special treat called Jack Wax. It's a really great maple candy made by boiling the syrup until basically all of the water is gone and then pouring it on snow. So see you at the Maple Fest, March 18th and 19th from 10 till 2.